Hello, everybody. Michael Tracy here. I have a Medium post that just went up on the TYT Medium page. The link is in the description box. And I wanted to outline some of the points that I made in this post. The post is once again on Russia, and I know a lot of people are incensed that I'm so inordinately focused on Russia. I get that complaint constantly. I'm told all the time that somehow I'm the one who's fixated on Russia, and I should let it go. I should focus on other issues. So, in response to that popular line of criticism, I wanted to just go through some things that happened in just the past week. So you tell me if I'm the one who's inordinately fixated, or if it's, I don't know, the Democratic Party, the media establishment, the political establishment, etc. Last weekend, I went to a town hall meeting in El Dorado Hills, California. You might have seen the video on the TYT Politics channel. If not, just scroll back a couple days and you can easily find it. And the number one issue there was Russia, okay? It wasn't me who told people to dwell on Russia. It was the constituents themselves who came and waved placards around saying that Trump plus Putin equals treason. And it was the constituents themselves who asked more about Russia than any other issue, such as, I don't know, healthcare, immigration, environmental policy, anything. This was what they were most focused on, okay? And then when I interviewed the congressman who was holding the town hall, somehow he was the one who ended up making the most sense on this topic, and he's a Republican. So I don't desire for Republicans to be the ones speaking most sensibly on this topic, but increasingly that seems to be the case. It was Tom McClintock who said, this is something resembling hysteria, and I think he was basically correct. So you can go and watch that video and see what he said. Okay, another thing that happened in the past week. There was a hearing held in the Senate to confirm the Deputy Attorney General. So the Deputy Attorney General is a very powerful position. That person is essentially in charge of running the day-to-day operations of the entire Justice Department. So the political predilections of that appointee really matter a lot. And the purpose of a confirmation meeting is to extract various information from a nominee that could shed light on what he's liable to do when he's in a position of power and running the day-to-day operations of the Department of Justice. So if you go and watch that hearing, and again, all this stuff will be linked to within the Medium post. So you can go watch the full 3.5-hour thing on C-SPAN if you want. That's what I did. I wouldn't necessarily advise average people to do that, but if you're a little mixed up in the head, maybe you'll feel compelled to do that. So that's what I did. And it's not an exaggeration to say that every Democrat on the committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, basically spent an overwhelming portion of their time just railing against Russia. So it's hard to sort of encapsulate the enormity of the domain over which a Deputy Attorney General will preside. So there's so many policies that go into running the Justice Department, and the scope of that position is so wide. But for some reason, the Democrats couldn't talk about anything except Russia at this hearing. There were some senators, such as Pat Leahy, a Democrat of Vermont, who literally spent virtually all of his time talking about Russia. So he didn't see anything as of any practical import other than Russia. Okay, so consequentially, it fell to Republicans on the committee to talk about actual policy. So Mike Lee, the conservative Republican senator from Utah, ended up extracting a commitment from the Deputy Attorney General nominee, whose name is Rod Rosenstein. And Lee extracted a commitment from Rosenstein that Rosenstein would see fit to defer to localities on civil forfeiture law. So if a municipality ends up prohibiting or limiting the use of civil forfeiture, which basically means police can just seize property even in the absence of a criminal offense, then the federal policy would be to defer to those localities. So that's really important. That has actual real world effect on people's lives and on how law enforcement operate. But Democrats weren't talking about policy for the most part. They were talking about Russia, and they were joined by, of course, Senator Lindsey Graham. But for some reason, this fixation means that the policy discussions are being ceded to Republicans. So that's the practical effect of what Democrats are doing. Okay, so another event that happened this week was the CIA revelations that were released by WikiLeaks. I made a video about that. You probably heard something about it. So this was the most potentially significant leak of sensitive information since the Snowden revelations. It could even surpass the Snowden revelations in terms of significance, according to some officials who have commented on it. It's the most wide-reaching or far-reaching release of CIA documents ever in history, apparently. So, what happened when WikiLeaks put out that release? They were instantly met by the reaction from various prominent Democrats and liberals that, this is just some sort of scheme by WikiLeaks to help their best friend Trump, because WikiLeaks is nothing but a pawn of the Russian intelligence services, and somehow, Trump plus Putin plus WikiLeaks equals bad, according to these people. That's how reductive they are in their thinking, apparently. So what ended up happening was the actual substance of the leaks. So the fact that the CIA has the capacity to hack smart TV devices or can basically circumvent encryption apps on smartphones, that didn't have the impact that you would expect, because because liberals and Democrats largely immediately leapt to declare that this was just part of the grand Trump-Russia conspiracy. So that's another practical, real-world impact of all this that occurred just within the past week. Could you continue? Rachel Maddow, who is very influential still within a segment of the liberals and the populists, at least the TV viewing liberals. It's funny, I was at a Democratic town hall a couple weeks ago in San Diego, and Rachel Maddow got a huge round of applause, and everybody kind of burst into raucous cheering when her name was mentioned. So she's an influential person. And what is she leading her TV shows with this week? Russia. Okay, so she has this sinister-looking graphic that's accompanying her broadcasts, and it's leading her show. It says the Russian connection, and it's the American flag kind of combined in a nefarious-looking way with the Russian flag, and it's very scary. So that's what the liberal media is focusing on. Liberal media meaning MSNBC, Mother Jones, Talking Points memo, stuff like that. Also this week. So this is just this week. I could go back 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and there'd be a lot more to say. And there'd probably even be more to say about this 1 week span. But I'm just focusing on the past 7 days. In the past 7 days, a poll was released by CNN, which reported that more Americans view Russia as a, quote, very serious threat than at any time since 1983. So what was going on in 1983 that's not going on now? Gee, I don't know. The Cold War, when, maybe there was some semblance of a legitimate reason for people to be concerned about Russia. Obviously, then it was the Soviet Union, and there was hysteria around communism and infiltration of American institutions by the Reds and that kind of thing. So it was a little different then. But the point is that on the backs of this Democrat-led hysteria, you're instilling in the nation this idea that Russia is a huge geopolitical threat that we all have to be worried about and have to take active measures to counteract. And that surge in polling is driven by liberals and Democrats. I mean, those are the people who now view Russia as a serious threat. What else is going on? Okay, so you have prominent Democrats making just wholly unsubstantiated claims about Russia and Trump. And this is damaging not because Trump needs to be shielded from criticism, even overwrought fact-free criticism. Who cares about that, really? What's the result of that kind of fact-free accusations is that it undermines the credibility of Democrats to actually formulate a critique when Trump is the one making unsubstantiated claims, as he did with the supposed wiretapping of Trump Tower by Obama, that was ordered by Obama. So Maxine Waters went on MSNBC. Maxine Waters, the Democratic representative from California, she went on MSNBC and claimed that the sex allegations in the Trump dossier are true. Remember the Trump dodgy dossier that came out and was published by BuzzFeed, written by a former MI6 operative, which claimed that the Russian government has compromising information on Trump and may even have videotaped him engaging in salacious sex acts. That caused a huge frenzy at the time. People thought it was so hilarious. And Maxine Waters now says that she knows that the sex allegations are true. So she apparently knows that the Russian government has hanging over the head of Trump video of him engaging in sex acts with prostitutes. Okay, that's how sort of debased the discussion is at this point. And anybody who's looked at this with any credibility whatsoever says that these allegations have no merit. Maybe at some point later in the future we'll get corroboration of Trump having engaged in these sex acts on camera. As of now, there's almost no reason to believe that it's accurate. And then also in the past week, the House Democrats held a hearing, there was a hearing held in the House in which Democrats got so hysterical that they had to be chastised by Republican colleagues for getting ahead of themselves and connecting dots spuriously and painting various events as inherently sinister when they're not. So those are things that happened in merely the past week. Okay, so when I'm the one being accused of fixating on this, I just have to wonder, okay, so are you just ignoring how the political establishment is expressing its obsession? Should I just let that occur without any kind of critical scrutiny? Is that really a wise way to process this hysteria that we're seeing constantly, which just seems to be ramping up with every passing week? I don't think so. I don't think it's me, somebody who's writing on Medium and does videos for the Young Turks, who is encouraging a fixation on this. I think it's the promulgators of the fixation in the political and media establishment who are probably more responsible. I discussed sort of the long-term implications of this. Something that I've heard pretty commonly among Democrats is, even if they don't fully buy into the Russia-Trump conspiracy, they favor going forward with it and focusing on it because they think that it'll have the effect of weakening Trump on a short-term basis, and it'll stymie his governing agenda, and then, I don't know, ultimately result in Democrats attaining power. So they're sort of cynically wagering that this is a worthwhile use of energy and time. But my question is, are you really? What about the paranoia that's being fomented? What about the kind of hysterical climate that's being encouraged? And within such a climate, it's difficult to actually conduct substantive politics because everybody is focused on these conspiracies, and this is what people are demanding, and the hysteria is trickling from the political elites to the grassroots level. So you're deflecting energy from where it could otherwise be devoted to actually exploit various weaknesses within the Trump and Republican agenda, and you're giving people false assurances. So that's what I've always objected to. And then there's another really kind of dire potential consequence of this, which is that since all the pressure on Trump is to be more belligerent toward Russia, whenever he kind of refrains from exhibiting belligerence toward Russia, that's immediately construed as evidence that he's been compromised, right? And that pressure is coming from Democrats and some Republicans. So at some point, it's easy to envision Trump being in a scenario where, I don't know, there's some kind of military happening, and the pressure is on him to take some kind of rash action, retaliatory or aggressive, and attack some kind of Russian installation or something in Syria, which is a hotbed, in Ukraine, maybe someplace else. And Trump might feel compelled to do this because all the pressure coming from a multitude of directions is on him to take a harder line against Russia. And that could precipitate some kind of cataclysmic military conflict. And if that happens, partially responsible will be obviously Trump, who if he initiates such a conflict, but also culpable will be Democrats and liberals and people in the media who have sought to foment this kind of paranoid frenzy. So it could have a really disastrous real-world impact, and I don't think people are adequately reckoning with that potential eventuality. So that's my rant for the day. You go read it in a little more of a coherent form in the Medium post, which again is linked here. And then let me know what you think. I'm going to be going to another town hall meeting this weekend. So be on the lookout for that. And have a great day.